I never thought I'd be the kind of person who cried in front of someone I barely knew. But there I was at 2 a.m, sitting on the edge of my bunk in our tiny dorm room, trying desperately to keep quiet while my whole world fell apart. My phone was still warm in my hand from the call with my mum, her voice echoing in my head telling me that Dad was gone. Just like that. Heart attack, no warning, no goodbye. And across the room, in the darkness, I could hear Reed breathing, probably awake, probably wondering what the hell was wrong with his randomly assigned roommate who'd only moved in 3 weeks ago. I'd met Reed on move-in day, both of us sweating through our shirts as we hauled boxes up 4 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that fell across his forehead, and these incredibly warm brown eyes that seemed to notice everything. When our parents finally left and it was just the 2 of us in this shoebox of a room, he'd smiled at me and said, "Well, I guess we're stuck with each other." I'd laughed, thinking this was just going to be one of those random roommate situations you tolerate for a year. I had no idea how wrong I was. The first week was normal enough. We established our routines, figured out who got which shelf in the mini-fridge, learned each other's class schedules. Reed was a music major, which meant he kept weird hours, and sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to find him sitting at his desk with headphones on, working on some composition. I was studying engineering, which meant I had the opposite problem, buried in problem sets until my eyes crossed. We were polite, friendly even, but strangers sharing space. Then one night, about 2 weeks in, I was struggling with a particularly brutal calculus assignment, and I must have made some sound of frustration, because Reed pulled off his headphones and looked over at me. "You okay over there?" he asked. I explained the problem, not really expecting him to understand, but he got up and came over to my desk, leaning over my shoulder to look at my work. That's when I noticed he smelled like cedar and something else, something clean and warm. My brain short-circuited for a second, and I had to force myself to focus on what he was saying about the equation. He didn't solve it for me, but he asked questions that helped me see where I'd gone wrong. When I finally got it, he grinned at me, and something in my chest did this weird flip thing I'd never felt before. After that, we started actually talking. Real conversations, not just roommate logistics. I learned that Reed grew up in Oregon, that he'd taught himself piano when he was 7, that his parents were divorced and he spent every summer bouncing between their houses. He learned that I was from a small town in Ohio, that I'd never been great at making friends, that I was the first person in my family to go to college. We started eating dinner together sometimes, studying in companionable silence, watching movies on his laptop on Friday nights when neither of us had plans. I didn't think much about the way I started looking forward to seeing him at the end of the day, or how I'd catch myself watching him when he was concentrating on his music, the way his fingers would tap out rhythms on his desk. I told myself it was just nice to have a friend, someone I could be comfortable with. I'd never really let myself think about the fact that I'd never had a girlfriend, never really been interested when my friends back home talked about girls. It was easier to just not think about it at all. But then there were these moments that made it harder to ignore. Like the time we were walking back from the dining hall and it started pouring rain, and we ran back to the dorm laughing, and when we got to our room we were both soaked, and he pulled his wet shirt off and I had to literally turn away because I couldn't breathe properly. Or the time he fell asleep on my bed while we were watching a movie, and I spent 20 minutes just looking at his face in the glow of the laptop screen, memorizing the line of his jaw, the way his eyelashes cast shadows on his cheeks. I started having these dreams that I'd wake up from, feeling confused and guilty and exhilarated all at once. Dreams where Reed would look at me the way I'd started looking at him, where the distance between our beds would disappear, where I'd know what it felt like to touch him the way I was increasingly wanting to. I'd lie awake after, listening to him sleep, wondering what the hell was happening to me and terrified that he'd somehow figure it out. So that night when my mum called, when my world collapsed, I was already in this weird emotional state where I didn't know which way was up. I'd gone out into the hallway to take the call because Reed was studying, and when she told me about Dad, I just stood there in the fluorescent light, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. I don't even remember walking back to the room. I just remember sitting on my bed, phone in hand, trying to process the fact that my father was gone, and I'd never told him half the things I needed to say. The tears came without permission, silent at first, then these awful shaking sobs I couldn't control. I put my face in my hands, trying to muffle the sound, trying to disappear into myself. Every breath felt like broken glass. I heard Reed's bed creak, heard his feet hit the floor, and I thought, great, now I'm going to have to explain this, going to have to talk when I can barely breathe. But he didn't ask me what was wrong. He didn't turn on the light or try to make me look at him. I felt the mattress dip as he sat down next to me, close enough that our shoulders were almost touching. He just sat there in the darkness, and after a minute he moved closer, eliminating that last inch of space between us. The warmth of his body against mine was the only solid thing in the world right then. I don't know what happened, he said quietly, but you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. I'm just here. Something about that broke me open even more. I turned toward him without thinking, and he wrapped his arms around me, pulling me against his chest. I cried into his shoulder, soaking his t-shirt, and he just held me, one hand on my back, the other cradling the back of my head. He didn't shush me or tell me it would be okay. He just held on while I fell apart. I don't know how long we sat like that. Eventually the sobs turned into shaky breaths, and I became aware of everything at once. The way his heart was beating steady against my ear. The way his thumb was moving in small circles on my back. The way I fit against him like I'd been designed for this exact position. I should have pulled away, but I couldn't make myself move. My dad died, I finally whispered. My mum just called. He had a heart attack. Reed's arms tightened around me. God, I'm so sorry. His voice was rough, and I realized he was crying too, crying for me, for my loss. That undid something in me I didn't even know was holding together. We stayed like that until the sky started getting light outside our window. At some point, we'd shifted so we were lying down, me still curled against his chest, his arms still around me. I should have felt awkward, should have worried about what this meant, but I was too exhausted and too broken to care. For the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe. Thank you, I said into the quiet, for not making me be alone. You're not alone, he said, and something in his voice made my heart skip. You're not alone, Dylan. The next few days were a blur. I flew home for the funeral, moved through it all in a fog of grief and exhaustion. Reed texted me every day, nothing heavy, just little messages to let me know he was thinking of me. Pictures of our dorm room, complaints about the dining hall food, a voice memo of him playing piano. They were lifelines, reminders that there was a world waiting for me to come back to. When I finally returned to campus a week later, I was dreading the awkwardness I was sure would be waiting. We'd crossed some line that night, and I didn't know how to uncross it. But when I opened the door to our room, Reed looked up from his desk and smiled, this soft, genuine smile that made my chest ache, and said, "Welcome back. I missed you." "I missed you too," I said, and meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. Things were different after that, but not in the way I'd feared. We were closer, more comfortable with each other. He'd touch my shoulder when he passed my desk. I'd lean against him when we watched movies. We'd fall asleep talking and wake up to find we'd migrated toward each other in the night. It felt natural, inevitable, like we were planets caught in each other's gravity. But I still didn't let myself think too hard about what it meant. I was still figuring out who I was, still processing my dad's death, still scared of what it would mean to admit what I was feeling. Reed never pushed, never asked for more than I was giving, but sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with this expression I couldn't read, and my heart would race. October turned into November, and the campus transformed into a riot of full colours. Reed and I started taking walks in the evenings, ostensibly to take study breaks, but really just to be together outside the confines of our tiny room. We'd wander through the quad, talking about everything and nothing, and I'd watch the way the setting sun turned his hair bronze and wonder when exactly I'd fallen in love with him. Because that's what this was. I could lie to myself about a lot of things, but not this. Not anymore. I was in love with my roommate, my best friend, the person who'd held me while I cried and never asked for anything in return. I was in love with Reed, and I had no idea what to do about it. One night in mid-November, we were in our room studying or pretending to study. I was actually just staring at the same page in my textbook I'd been staring at for 20 minutes, while my brain spun in circles. Reed was at his desk with his headphones on, working on something, his fingers flying over his keyboard. I watched him in the reflection of my laptop screen, safe in the knowledge that he couldn't see me looking. Then he pulled off his headphones and turned to me. "Can I show you something?" "Sure," I said, trying to sound normal and not like someone who'd just been caught staring. He grabbed his laptop and came over to my bed, sitting down next to me close enough that our thighs touched. "I've been working on this piece for weeks, and I think it's finally done. You're the first person I want to hear it." He hit play, and music filled the small space between us. It was piano, simple at first, then building into something complex and beautiful and achingly sad. I listened, barely breathing, aware of Reed watching me, waiting for my reaction. The music swelled and fell, and I felt tears prickling at my eyes because it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. When it ended, I turned to him. "Reed, that's incredible. What's it called?" He looked down at his hands. "I haven't named it yet. I wrote it after that night, after your dad. I couldn't stop thinking about you, about what you were going through, and this just came out." "You wrote that for me?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. He met my eyes, and there was something vulnerable in his expression, something open and terrifying. "I write a lot of things thinking about you lately." The air between us felt electric, charged with everything we weren't saying. I could feel my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Reed, you don't have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest with you because you're the most important person in my life, and I can't keep pretending that's all it is." "What if I don't want you to pretend?" The words came out before I could stop them, before fear could lock them away. His eyes widened. "Dylan, I don't know what I'm doing," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I don't know how to do this or what it means or if I'm even any good at it. But I know that I think about you all the time. I know that I've never felt like this about anyone. I know that when you held me that night, it was the first time I'd felt safe in my entire life." Reed's hand came up to cut my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "You don't have to know how to do this. We can figure it out together." "I'm scared," I admitted. "Me too," he said, "but I'm more scared of not trying." I don't know which of us moved first. Maybe we both did. But suddenly his lips were on mine, soft and tentative and perfect, and my entire world realigned around this single point of contact. His hand slid into my hair, and I grabbed the front of his shirt, pulling him closer, pouring months of longing into this kiss. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that for so long." "Why didn't you?" I asked. "I was waiting for you to be ready. I would have waited forever if that's what you needed." I kissed him again, slower this time, trying to memorize every detail. The way he tasted, the sound he made in the back of his throat, the way his hands trembled slightly where they touched my face. This was real. This was happening. This was allowed. We spent the rest of the night talking, curled up together on my bed, learning how to be this new version of ourselves. Reed told me he'd known he was gay since he was 14, that he'd come out to his parents in high school, that he'd been attracted to me from the first day but hadn't wanted to make things weird. I told him about growing up in a small town where being different wasn't safe, about never letting myself think too hard about why I never fit in, about the terror and relief of finally understanding myself. "I don't know how to do this," I said again, sometime around 3 a.m. "Be with someone. Be with you." "There's no right way to do it," Reed said, playing with my fingers, tracing the lines of my palm. "We just be honest with each other. We figure it out as we go. What if I mess it up? Then we'll fix it together." He kissed my forehead. "Dylan, I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me." "Good," I said, and meant it with everything in me. "I don't want to be anywhere else." The rest of the semester unfolded like a dream I was afraid to wake up from. We were careful at first, not sure how to navigate being together in the small fishbowl of our dorm, but gradually we relaxed into it. We'd study with our legs tangled together, fall asleep in each other's beds, steal kisses between classes. Our friends figured it out eventually, and to my surprise, no one cared. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. My mum called one night in December, and I took the call out in the hallway like I always did. We talked about Dad, about the holidays coming up, about how I was doing with my classes, and then, before I could stop myself, I said, "Mum, there's something I need to tell you." My heart was racing, but Reed was on the other side of the door, and knowing he was there gave me courage. I told her about Reed, about us, about finally understanding this part of myself. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I braced myself for rejection, for disappointment. "Dylan," she finally said, her voice thick with emotion, "I just want you to be happy. That's all your father ever wanted too. If this boy makes you happy, then I'm happy." I started crying right there in the hallway, relief and grief and joy all mixed together. "He does, Mom. He really does." "Then bring him home for Christmas. I want to meet him." When I went back into the room, Reed took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. "How did it go?" "She wants to meet you," I said into his shoulder. "She wants you to come home with me for Christmas." I felt him smile against my hair. "I'd love to meet her. I'd love to see where you grew up." Christmas break was everything I'd hoped for and terrified of all at once. Reed charmed my mum immediately, helping her cook dinner and asking about photo albums and genuinely interested in her stories about my dad. She pulled me aside on Christmas Eve and said, "He's good for you. I can see it in your eyes. You're happy." "I am," I said, and it was true. Despite the grief that still hit me in waves, despite the fear that sometimes crept in late at night, I was happier than I'd ever been. Reed and I took a walk that night through my old neighbourhood, everything quiet and covered in snow. We held hands, not caring who might see, and I showed him the house I grew up in, the park where I used to hide when I needed to think, the high school where I'd felt so alone. "I wish I'd known you then," Reed said. "I wish I could have told you it gets better." "You're telling me now," I said. "That's what matters." We kissed under the streetlight, snow falling around us, and I thought about how much had changed in just a few months. I'd lost my father, found myself, fallen in love. I'd learned that grief and joy could exist in the same moment, that being vulnerable was the bravest thing you could do, that love wasn't something to be afraid of. When we got back to campus in January, we moved through the spring semester like we'd been together for years instead of months. We had our fights, our moments of doubt, our struggles with balancing school and each other. But we also had lazy Sunday mornings tangled up together, late-night conversations about our futures, the quiet confidence of knowing someone had your back. One night in April, we were lying in his bed, my head on his chest, his fingers running through my hair. "I love you," I said. It wasn't the first time I'd said it, but it still felt important every time. "I love you too," he said, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. "Thank you for letting me in, for trusting me. Thank you for not laughing when I cried," I said, "for just moving closer." "I'll always move closer," he promised, "no matter what." And I believed him, because Reed had taught me that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about showing up, about being present, about choosing each other even when it was hard. It was about sitting in the darkness with someone and not trying to fix them, just being there until the light came back. I didn't know what the future held for us. We had another year of college, then the uncertainty of real life beyond these walls. But I knew that whatever came, we'd face it together. Because I'd found something in this tiny dorm room I'd never expected to find. Myself, my person, my home. Reed shifted beside me, and I looked up to find him smiling down at me, his eyes soft in the dim light. "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am," I said. "How glad I am that you were assigned as my roommate." "Best random lottery of my life," he agreed, and kissed me, slow and sweet and full of promise. Outside our window, the campus was settling into night, but in here, in this small space we'd made ours, everything was exactly as it should be. I'd spent so long being afraid of who I was, of what I felt, of letting anyone see the real me. But Reed had seen me at my lowest, had held me through my grief, and had loved me anyway. Had loved me because of it, not despite it. That was worth everything. Worth the fear, worth the uncertainty, worth the risk of being vulnerable. Because on the other side of that fear was this: love, acceptance, belonging. The knowledge that I didn't have to face the world alone anymore. I closed my eyes, listening to Reed's heartbeat, feeling his warmth surrounding me, and let myself believe in tomorrow, in us, in the beautiful, terrifying, wonderful possibility of forever.